And we're live.
Beautiful. So how are you, bro? How's things?
Oh, it's been quite the eventful week. Um, biggest item of business is I had a job interview for GE down in North Carolina. So
Oh yeah?
yeah, basically doing the exact same thing I'm doing here, just for the main competitor, just you know by the beach.
Wow. It's
So
exciting,
yeah,
the prospect. Yeah.
So I think that went pretty well. Aside from that, uh, I got a little blindsided by um, a big game release this weekend. It was called Monsters and Memories, and essentially it's a very obscure game, but it's my most anticipated game that I've been waiting for I'd say 3+ years. And
Hmm.
they had a free test weekend that I just spontaneously heard about, and they're trying to do like a '90s style MMO, if that makes sense. Like the stuff that happened before WoW, when it was a lot more like Dungeons and Dragons,
Hmm.
just with a better UI and sort of like how like a lot of games are doing like the 2.5D, kind of retro graphics, but it's kind of sparkly, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so it was a big weekend for game. There's big had some really good Bitcraft streams, um, and then job interview, and so it's. What about you? What have you been up? What was your weekend like?
Um, really same old on the surface. I'm just continuing to neutrally observe my actions and thoughts, continually trying to practice staying balanced. Um, Staying centered, like no matter what kind of happens around. And so I'm kind of like watching myself almost like try to stay on the balance board and occasionally, getting off balance and trying to correct that. That's mostly where my attention's been at. But I did reconnect with an old friend. It was really good to talk to
Hmm.
that person today. And yeah, we have a lot in common. They were actually the one that told me about AA initially, and so they're struggling with sort of like drug abuse still, but they're an extremely like conscious um person. So it's really interesting to talk to them because the wisdom and the humility often go hand in hand. So
For
they're
sure.
definitely they're definitely on that track with us. And And then I also discovered a sacred text supposedly written by King Solomon. And we can talk about that another time. But on the opening page, it had a nice line that I thought was beautiful that you'd like to hear. It said, like, that this book is dedicated to those who want to walk the narrow path between wisdom and mystery.
Mmm. Sounds about right.
Yeah, it's a really dope way to put that. Um, so yeah, I
I had
mean,
a question because I'm
yeah.
not super familiar with Book of Enoch. I've just kind of like heard a couple of things here and there. But one of the latest big things I heard was like a whistleblower talking about human alien hybrid breeding facilities, and the top comment on the post was someone saying that that reminded them of the Book of Enoch, and I didn't know what the connection there might be. That has to do with like Nephilim or something like that.
Yeah, it's the Book of Enoch that we have is it almost sounds like a mystery story. It's got a very different subject and like cadence than the rest of the Bible. Um, I can't really like say too much about it other than that.
Like what? How would a post about secret alien facilities remind that person, but also like a lot of people because it was like the top comment of that,
mm,
and so
yeah, man, that was a couple years ago when I read that one, but the the reason why I said it comes off like a mystery story is it kind of like I'll describe how it sounds real quick. It's sort of like in a galaxy far, far away, there was millions of species and millions of nodes. Like a creator god formed one species out of nothingness. Like it's like this type of like grandiose like epic, but it's not
yeah,
that long. You know, it's kind of like so it's got a lot of
like the floating text in Star Wars.
yes, it's got a lot of things that would turn people's attention towards very mysterious things because it's kind of a very grandiose scale and like very much talking about like at least interdimensional consciousness, if not directly interdimensional beings, like that type of like flavor. It's not super coherent, like it doesn't it's not very like fleshed out, but it's very well written if you like value like poetry. And so it's I feel like it could remind a lot of people of a lot of things, you know.
Sure.
Um yeah. Um
The
so-
and speaking of X, I know you're kind of taking a break from it, but there was this crazy big phenomenon over the weekend. Um,
mm,
it was this big love affair between America and Japan, um, which I don't know about you, but I never saw any Japanese people on X. Like the way that the algorithm was tuned, like you would never actually see Japanese people. You really
mm,
wouldn't see people from most countries, right? I mean, it was, it's basically like America, Canada, Australia, Europe, and then like the Middle East was, pretty much all you'd see. Um, but like nothing really from Asia, nothing from Africa, South America. And this is done on purpose, actually. Like, they can set like which countries and like where they're at on the totem pole. So because Elon, two things happened. He made like a big business deal, of course. Like he's gonna build something, ginormous over there. And so he felt like currying some favor. But also he discovered that the number of X users in Japan had surpassed America. And so he did this sort of
wow.
this thing where he basically made both countries' timelines be 50-50 of each other. And then he turned the auto translate on because that's also like a country to country thing. He turned the like if you see a Japanese post, turn it into English. If you see an American post, turn it into Japanese. And so we were just
Wow.
all talking to each other over the weekend, and it was this huge event, and people just realizing like, you know, maybe they were surprised. I wasn't surprised that Japanese culture, American culture, they're very much best friends, and for a lot of people on there, they were like, you know, they thought that it was like a one-sided love, like, oh, I like your anime and your sushi, but you probably hate my guts or something like that. Or and then the Japanese being like, oh, I love whiskey and cowboy hats and guns, but like you probably hate my guts, if you saw me liking those things or something. And then
Wow.
people were like, no, actually, and there was a lot of healing being done because like people were talking about how cultural appropriation is dead cultural appreciation is here now. You know,
Wow.
it's basically like just taking it to the people sharing things. Like whether it was like Americans, dressed up as Japanese characters or Japanese people dressed up as American characters, and then them just saying it's cultural appreciation. Cultural appropriation is dead, and everyone
It's a
just
beautiful.
clapping and agreeing, and people using the Grok image to like make like anime mashups of Americans and Japanese, like being like a team up, sort of like Goku and Vegeta.
That's a beautiful share, man. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, yeah.
Love to
It's
hear
like
that.
it's yeah. I mean, when you wield that kind of power, it's good to see something kind of like wholesome. Like even if it is kind of wrapped up in like a multi-billion-dollar deal,
Yeah.
it's still really nice for the people to. It was just so positive over the weekend. I was like, this is this isn't my negativity app. What's going on here? It's like my favorite meme for X is just Vegeta looking disgusted at his phone, and he's like, "Why is there porn on my racism app?" I'm like, I'm like me every day.
Jesus.
Which that was like another thing that they were, because I would say of all the major social media platforms, of course, X is the most racist, and all the Japanese were like, "Wait, you guys too? I thought it was just us."
Wow.
So
Epic.
there was a lot of bonding going on. It was great, and then, I mean it's still kind of continuing. Elon comments on it, and he goes, um, basically like. Uh, he's like, you open X after the Japanese timeline cleanse, and it's just Dorothy stepping out into Oz for the first time with like the angelic music, like ah. It's like he knew what he did. He knew what he
Mm,
he knew what he did. So
beautiful.
so yeah, it's our Japanese American friendship app now.
Nice. Love that shit. Love that for us.
So
Um, cool. So a little later in the stream, Sean, we're gonna be checking out a game. What's that game
that's
called?
right. I we kind of just jumped right in, and there might be people watching, maybe even watching the VODs. They're like, "Why haven't you started the game yet?" Yeah, so we wanted to kind of take our time and catch up a little bit, but we are going to be checking out a brand new game. It is a first-person role-playing game called I Am Jesus Christ, taking place, in biblical times, and I'm pretty sure from what I've gathered from looking at it, you are playing from the perspective, looking through, the eyes of Jesus, playing through, the scenarios that are shown in the Bible. And it's kind of interesting to me because I'm like, there isn't I mean, obviously, there's a lot of Christian iconography in games or movies and things, but there isn't like a definitive strictly kind of scriptural type game, and I don't know if this will be it. And I haven't looked at it. This is a blind impression, and that's why I wanted to bring my resident expert along for the ride, Drew here, and because I mean we already have a film that definitively does that, right? Mel Gibson, Passion of the Christ, and I was just wondering if this would be sort of like more in that direction, or if it's silly, or if it misses the mark, or if it's a masterpiece. We don't really know. But the other interesting thing about the timing is that we're actually playing this game one day before it launches, and it's been in development for several years. So, kind of excited about it.
Very. And because of the timing on my end, I was wondering if I could bring up the weekly shadow work questions before we start with the
Of
games.
course, yes.
Beautiful. So I got two bangers, or I think they're bangers. for us to look at. The first one is, if I stopped trying to prove myself entirely, what am I afraid would happen?
I want to take this down on my. I got my handy dandy notepad here. If I stop trying to prove myself,
Yeah.
uh,
If I stop trying to prove myself entirely, what am I afraid would happen?
what am I afraid will happen? That's a very good question.
Yeah, really. Go ahead.
That does, at least in the day to day rat race that we find ourselves in, that does seem to be the driving content. Because it starts first thing in the morning. You gotta prove that you can show up on time to work and be presentable, and then maybe you go and you hang out with your friends, and maybe you have to prove something in a social situation. Maybe you have a relationship. Got to pull your weight there, and so it kind of uh, unless you spend a fair amount of time alone, um, whether it's intended or not, I would say any kind of situation with more than one person, there's going to be that underlying uh, pull to try and prove yourself. I think.
Yeah, there's the social pressure that you brought up, and then there's also the internal pressure. And I don't know, I don't know what you think about the internal pressure, but my first kind of examination of that says that it has to do with identity. Like we, from the internal pressure, we are afraid of being labeled as X, even if the labeler is ourselves. Or maybe especially if the labeler is ourselves.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Remember, it calls to mind an old saying from a person that you shared with me like many years ago when we were first starting to play WoW, and you told me about a guy who said the worst thing about playing WoW was that you'd have to tell people that you play WoW.
mm,
That's what it makes me think of.
yeah, the you're I love that because it's like the hyper judgment, and you can almost tell that that person was being well, I guess projecting that other people would be hyper judgy,
Right,
right?
right,
But in reality, he was the only one being hyper judgy.
right.
Like it's maybe maybe part of these ideas come from judgments or assessments that we've gained or gathered along the way. Like maybe this is like the cool kids table, or um or this is the socially ostracized, unsafe, sort of like, for instance, if there's an Aunt Lucy in the family, and the way that the table discussions go are like, you don't want to end up like Aunt Lucy, and
Mm,
then you as a you know 4-year old go, why, what's wrong with Aunt Lucy, mama? And she goes, oh, she's just a little crazy, little tapped in the head. But as you continue to have these formative experiences where you're trying to get the lay of the land of this environment, you pick up judgments, and then those judgments end up being slave drivers for for you in the now when these judgments or assessments were set up from a 5-year-old self or a 10-year-old self or a 15-year-old self, or later too. You know, if you're 50, you might be uh, gripping tightly to a judgment that you made when you were 40 or 30,
Yeah,
and to you
and
that's
the
a big
further
deal.
back that goes, the harder it is to recognize. Like, you know, especially like it gets harder to, um, you know, remember uh, older memories from your childhood as you get older. Um, so yeah, and so you'll be, like you said, kind of stuck on that treadmill without even knowing where it comes from.
That's a great point, Sean, and I think um, one of the relevant details about what you just said is that we often don't have an accurate depiction of the state that we were in when we made those judgments. So recently, um, I went home and got to see some family members, one of whom was a 20-year-old brother. And after watching him for the week, I said to my mom, was I kind of like that? Like at that state of functioning or awareness at that age? And she goes, yeah, pretty much. And what it immediately made me do is disregard anything that I thought I had learned during that time. Because I was like, if that was my level of functioning or level of consciousness, then I don't want to be what's the word when you
Like
I don't
beholden.
want to I was thinking of like a vote where you like agree. You're like, you know, I don't want to be like, yeah, but beholden. I don't want to be
Yeah.
tethered to that level of consciousness at all. I don't really care what I said when I was that age. Like if that was and the reason why I bring that up is because I don't remember being that unconscious. But at this age, looking back, I was like, well, that's not very informed. You know, that's not a legacy I want to keep alive or a version of myself that I want to be proliferating or promoting or uh, you know, signing off on at all. So
Yeah.
there was like a few things that I was able to heal just from viewing that like of you know, I was under the illusion that if you took something seriously, it would help you manage it. And so that was must have been a part of me at different times in my life. And at that age, I was aware of how much I didn't know to some extent, but I was also aware of like the life decisions that had to be made, and I wanted to not fuck them up. So I took them very seriously. And so I came out of probably that, you know, that time period with a couple of hard and fast rules of like, this is the way the world is. This is the way I need to respond. This is the way I'm going to do it. And
Right,
one of my big,
because the
go ahead.
world asks you to be so decisive at such a not really decisive time in our lives, you know, 18, 19, 20. You have to be so damn decisive. And you
Mm,
know, maybe there was a point in time where that was like an age of maturity, but I think that with lifespans growing and just modern conveniences, I don't think 18 is like what it used to be, like even 100 years ago.
sure.
And you can even test this by just kind of looking at appearance. Um, like you look at pictures of 18-year-olds and 100 years ago, even 50 years ago, and they just look more grown up. And it's not, and it's beyond the attire. I mean, they just look more mature. And I think that that's because, sort of like hobbits in the Lord of the Rings, our age of maturity, our lifespan is just elongating. You know, obviously it was more exaggerated in Lord of the Rings. They said something like, you know, their coming of age is like 50. But like um, it really does kind of feel like 30 is the new 20 and so on. So
Yeah, and the kicking the can down the road, right? The being told at a young age that life is really going to be about what you do when you get older, and then you're older, and then you hear that life is really about what you're going to do when you retire.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We have
And that,
it's like
yeah, go ahead.
we for most folks, it's sort of like you are born into having to serve a couple of different sentences by default. The first is 12 years of school, and then the next is 20 to 40 years of employment, and then it's not even guaranteed you make it out to the other side. You still there?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, I'm in a laundromat for just a second, so the volume, I didn't want it to like
Oh, no
drown out
worries.
whatever was going on.
No worries.
Um, but yeah, just give me 1 second, and I will be out of here.
I don't know if I told you this, but I've recently come around to a new political stance that's kind of niche, and to the society that we live in would definitely be deemed as sort of extreme. But I am now in favor of abolishing mandatory education.
I
I,
love that. I
I
think that's
don't
great.
even think like the more I looked into it and the more I thought about it, I don't even think that it's not even that it doesn't provide a good enough benefit. I think that it actually is just a larger harm than good. Um, and I won't make it all about this, but it was just very interesting that as soon as I kind of came around to that, and I started, kind of commenting here and there about it on X, I found people that had the similar idea. And I think what inspired it is this great creator on YouTube called The Abolitionist. And his entire channel is about tackling the abortion issue as if it's the slavery issue of the 1800s. He takes it from like that angle, which is very
Wow.
creative and it's very effective. Um, Basically, to summarize, his key point is that supporters of abortion make the same exact talking points as supporters of slavery did in the 1800s, and they were also sort of deemed as like that was the societal norm. And so, after watching a bit of that, I was like, I wonder if I could kind of like apply that similar logic to 12 grades of school, and I think you can. So that's what I would say
Wow.
is that it's an abolitionist's standpoint, basically shifting it from being like a view on an issue to a principle.
Wow. Yeah. I think your mind and mine were going to this exact same place there by bringing that in. Because what I was going to say when I was in the laundromat in response to you was that um, real education or wisdom or decisiveness or whatever comes from experience. And so any amount of kicking the can down the road halts your experience immediately because now you're daydreaming. You're
One
not getting experience.
100%, 100%. And so, people say, well, what would you do in lieu of that? And I'm like, well, we have thousands of years of history to look. Um, and the answer is kids basically, when they find the agency, it's a different time for everyone, right? But essentially, you just treat 12-year-olds like they're 18-year-olds. It's like you can go out and work, you can go to college, you can stay at home, you can, whatever you want to do. Like that, it's just imagine all the things that society expects an 18-year-old has options to do, and you just say, well, what about 10? What about 12? What about 14? And you basically just allow children to be small children until they're at least 10. And then, like I said, everybody's an individual, and they are kind of, I call it agency, basically your propensity to want to leave the nest. And that's going to be different for everybody. But I don't think that there's any benefit. In fact, there's actually a harm. Like you said, the biggest thing is kicking the can down the road. And just from a liberty standpoint, it's very bizarre to enact a sentence on people that has to be something like 12 years. And if you don't abide by it or provide acceptable alternatives, like homeschooling that is monitored and supervised, someone can go to jail. So there's a threat of violence if you don't adhere to the sentence. So, it's like people think I'm kidding, like, but it's like it's not like the stoner punk thing, like, oh, school's dumb. No, 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 no. It's like, no, no. I actually think it's wrong. It's not that it's not that it used to annoy me, and now I actually just like think that it's morally incorrect in the same way that abortion or slavery is. I think it's obviously not. Um, they're not all the same impact level, but it's in the same vein as far as it's an immoral level of control.
Absolutely. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Is there anything else that we should say about this particular shadow work question before we share the next one?
I think one of the things that jumps right to top of mind of what I would be afraid is like, would there be nothing, or like would I be this is to say maybe like would I be bored if I could truly stop proving myself. I would say that's probably the first fear that jumps to mind is like, is that just nothing?
Ooh, I love that. And it's the fear of boredom is such a motivator, but I don't think that's what you're really pointing to fully. It's this idea of um, the needing to know almost, and I might even postulate that like needing to know about the future is like very much not your business.
Yeah.
And I'll explain what I mean by that because I think it needs a little bit of a
Yes.
qualifier, which is that like you won't be there in the future. Like the future won't contain you because you is a quality of consciousness that is only happening now.
Right.
When you're in the future, or let's say when a future event takes place that isn't now, that will be a different version of you. We are already so affected by what we do, what we eat, our cycle, our sleep cycles, our other type of cycles. We're already so affected by them, and on some level, we know that, but I'm not sure we really give credit to the type, like the sort of the sway of differences that we experience from moment to moment. Like the daily cycle is just an example of like you're fresh in the morning off of 8-10 hours sleep, or you've stayed up for 24, 28 hours, you're exhausted, you did a lot that day. It's a very different you. um, but more importantly, or rather more to the point, if you choose to get married in 3 years, that will be a very different version of you. On the
Yeah.
one hand, you will know everything you know now, but on another hand, um, it will be very different. Like, maybe unrecognizable. Like,
It reminds me of a lecture from Jordan Peterson where he talks about like why specifically uh, a breakup after a long serious relationship is so rough.
mm,
He said because uh, it 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 basically kills you in like an intellectual or spiritual kind of sense. He said because
mm,
as you're in the conscious moments, you are developing over time your vision of the future. And sort of like the more you stay on one track, the more that builds out, whether it's from a job or a geographical location or a relationship. And so, upending that kills that entire model. It's sort of like losing your saved game.
yeah,
You know
that
what I mean?
I love that point. Yeah, because what you're really commenting on is the practicality behind the phrase, like, um where, or like, I like to word it, where your attention lands, your experience expands.
Yeah,
But the other way is, where focus goes, energy grows, which is
right.
also a really nice way to put it, I think.
It'd be
But I
sort of
love the way
like,
that you broke it
and I
down
get
like
it
that.
too, because like from like a financial standpoint, it's like if say you had all your money in one bank account, and then one day that bank just disappears. It's the same kind of thing. And so like with a relationship, I mean, you're banking your energy, and then one day it just goes.
Yes, and the overlap between me and you is I pretty much read only spiritual texts, but you've read a lot of the big, like, Think and Grow Rich, Atomic Habits type of books, like,
Right.
How to Win Friends and Influence People. And these disciplines are so closely related. Like, when you listen to an expert in your field talk, they're saying exactly what a guru would say, but just as it pertains to money.
Right.
And Bob Proctor is like kind of one of the first waves or generations that I know of that was speaking about this. And I'm sure you've probably you've hit this in all your books, Sean. He says, if you want to grow your wealth, look at your money often. Like,
Yes.
look at it often. It's exactly the principle that you pointed out in Jordan Peterson's language and frame. And then the attention goes, energy grows
Yeah.
comment, because it's like, you just got to be paying attention. We
So
are in a Go ahead.
so basically what we're talking about is a universal truth.
Yes, and to put it in my language, we are in a simulation where the only thing that's happening is we are conversing with God and ordering off a menu, a matrix menu, and God delivers it to us in proportion to, essentially, like, how ready for it we are. And so we always get what we order. We just don't always realize it's happening.
Right.
And so that attention statement is simply saying, if you order that and are willing to pay for it, you will get it. Like, every time. I loved one of the, I don't remember which one, but like some of the money gurus, I get to like see some of their stuff because of the circles that I do research in. And in one of them, they open the book by saying, write down exactly what you want and write down exactly what you're willing to trade for it. And I love this question so much. It's such a sharp knife that slices through the illusion of the mind because the
Right.
mind says, well, why should I have to pay for it? Why should I have to give up anything?
Yeah.
It's like, well, because that's the way this matrix works.
Yeah. I just ordered a lobster linguine. I don't know why I have to pay for it.
Why do I have to?
and
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 the
then
matrix
so
has
so and
always
then you
worked like that.
see also what I would say as a follow up to that is that the people who write down in that second column anything, they for sure get it. If they're being
Yes.
if they're actually being serious.
If they're
Um,
really serious, anything will be the second, yeah, line
yeah,
of that. Yep. Yep. Um, and those yeah, those are the people that write those books.
yeah. It's
So if you're not
what I
willing
would
to,
call the champions.
yeah, so if you're not willing to pay anything, you are not um in that category. So just kind of, this is just simply assessing honestly where you're at. It's just helpful to know. Um if I guess just to, use a gaming analogy, like if you're a bronze player and you're taking advice from a GM, like that's not the advice you need to be taking, like
Yeah.
it's just a very different set of advice. It's a very different category because the GM just does all sorts of things automatically that you don't even have any idea that they exist. So
Some of the best game coaching I've ever seen was where it was tailor made to the bracket. You know, whether it was
yes.
day nine used to do this. Um, when I briefly got back into League of Legends last year, I saw that where a guy was saying, what is the advice that I would give for this position, like in each bracket. And what's cool is you're like, well, how does he know? Like he's been in GM for X number of whatevers, but he prefaces it by saying, you know, to do my research, I started a new account and like played through the ranks, and then I also asked viewers to like send in their games for me to watch from each bracket.
Mm.
So it was like he was in it firsthand, and then he also got to see games where he wasn't in it. It was just silver players or something, and so
Yes.
he was able to give information. Back to that, it's like again, if you're in bronze and you're getting information on how to move in from like diamond into or from master into grandmaster, it's just not relevant.
It's
And this
not
happens
relevant
all
at
the
all.
time in many disciplines.
It does.
Someone comes to you and is just like, well, oh, if you want money, like just buy 10 apartment buildings. And you're like,
Yes.
what? That was one of my Uber passenger once. It was he wanted to talk about money, and I was like, oh, I like talking about money. And he was like, well, this is what you got to start by doing. Get 10 apartment buildings. I'm like, wait, did you say start? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. But he was like 50. He was like 50 something years old, and I was like, yeah, that's probably a good start. If you're at the top of your career and you're 50, that's probably a good start. But like, I was like 25, so I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, beautiful, Sean. Love that.
So what's the second question?
Um, the second question is, why do I want what I want?
Ooh.
Sounds basic, super deep.
And
um,
if I can add a layer of quality control into this,
yeah.
um, what if you want to get to the bottom of it? Ask that 5 times.
Yes.
That's five why, saying that
Five.
takes about 5 layers of why to get close to the root cause. So like if I
Love
say,
that.
oh, uh, why do you want a six pack? So I can get girls. Why do you want to get girls? That's the second why. It's
Yeah.
just, and you just do that. And if you do it about 5 times, that's about the distance that it takes, plus or minus. But on average, they've done tests on this. They're like it takes about 5 layers of why to get there. So
Yeah. In the answer to that question, I posit that you will find everything you need to know, or you will find your entire ego in the questions. What are you trying to get, and what are you trying to avoid happening? The mind or the ego, the personality, the pattern of attention lives in these two questions. So to ask why you want something, it's like you're gonna have to go right to the source. And as my mentor put it, you don't actually want what you say you want. You want what you think, or sorry, you want what you think getting your goal will bring to you. So, like, it's like the money is a placeholder for freedom or something like that. It may not be exactly that for you, but that's like an example of maybe like a mid 20s, like, how do I gain money? Like, let's take some advice from the Uber person or this book or my mom or whatever. Um, you want what you think the objects will bring or the experiences will bring. To
right,
put it in a different way,
because it's not really
you,
about a number on a screen.
no. And you can recreate the experience. When we are down here, we aren't experiencing what happens to us as much as we're experiencing our response to what happens to us. So if you believe winning the lottery would make you happy, and then you find out I won, you're probably going to get excited in that moment, in this hypothetical moment where you want to win the lottery. And then, you can almost envision it, right? Put the ticket in your hand. You did it. $250 million. It's yours. Yeah, taxes. So, 130 million or whatever. But it's a lot of money. If that were true, you're going to feel this like excited feeling, maybe in your chest,
In your
right?
gut.
Maybe all in your gut, maybe all over your body, you know. Um that feeling is recreatable now. Like, you don't have to win the lottery unless you're in the mind's world where the mind says, "I'll decide how excited we're going to get."
Mm.
I'll decide how we're going to respond. So, all of the experience of winning that 130 million after taxes is actually recreatable today for almost all of us, I would say. At least 90% of us could actually get that excited, be that optimistic, be that happy, be that appreciative, be that grateful, and go do something very similar, but this is all lies at the question of why do you want what you want. I understand that if you think you want a Lamborghini, that you feel, or the ego believes that it's kicked the can far enough down the road that you're not going to attain that. Um, but truly, how would you feel in the Lamborghini and after getting all the things that you want? Because that is all recreatable in your everyday life, even if you have to work.
Mm-hmm.
That all of those experiences are being created from within you. So there's nothing external that could give them to you. It's just that the mind has made us believe that that is true. Was I rambling? I apologize.
No, no, no. So yeah, those are some really interesting questions, and I'm gonna ponder on that some more. That's why I wanted to jot it down in my my handy dandy here.
Perfect.
Um, so
That's the goal. And with that, Sean, whenever you're ready, I am ready
yeah.
to watch stream with you.
So what I'm gonna do, I quickly changed the title to pre-show, and I'm going to nix this one so it'll be like its own video, and then I'm going to start a second one.
Beautiful.
So stand by for that.